If I dropped you into a random American town and gave you 1 hour to find the richest person there, you'd probably fail. You'd look for the biggest house, the nicest car, the luxury neighborhood, and you'd almost certainly be wrong, because the wealthiest person in that town has likely spent decades mastering a skill that most people never learn: how to build wealth without looking wealthy. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why. But first, meet David. Because if you saw David standing in line at the grocery store, you probably wouldn't look twice. And that would be a mistake. Chapter 1. The man nobody notices. It's 6:41 on a Thursday morning. David pulls into a small diner on Main Street in a 12-year-old pickup truck. He orders black coffee and oatmeal. The waitress greets him by name. The cook waves from the kitchen. The owner stops by his table for a quick conversation. David has lived in this town for almost 30 years. Everyone knows him. Almost nobody knows he's worth more than $9 million. Ask around town who the richest person is, and you'll hear names like the surgeon with the lake house, the entrepreneur with the Ferrari, the family living behind the gates on Oak Hill Drive. Nobody mentions David, because David doesn't look rich, he doesn't act rich, he doesn't talk about money. And that's exactly the point. Real wealth often hides in plain sight. While people around him upgraded lifestyles, David quietly accumulated ownership: stocks, rental properties, private business investments, index funds, assets. And David isn't unusual. Study after study on self-made millionaires reveals something surprising. Many live remarkably ordinary lives, which raises an uncomfortable question. If wealthy people don't spend money the way most people imagine, what exactly are they doing differently? The answer starts at home. Chapter 2. The house that built the fortune. David still lives in the same house he bought in 1998, 3 bedrooms, a modest neighborhood, nothing extraordinary, friends upgraded, neighbors renovated. Co-workers moved into larger homes. David stayed. At the time, people assumed he simply couldn't afford more. Some quietly judged him. Others pitied him. What nobody realized was that every year David stayed put. He widened a gap, the gap between what he earned and what he spent. That gap became investments, year after year, decade after decade. Because larger houses rarely come alone, they bring larger mortgages, higher property taxes, more maintenance, more furniture, and more pressure to maintain appearances. David understood something most people never learn. A house can either impress people or quietly fund your future. Rarely both. Today, many of the people who once looked wealthier than David are still making mortgage payments. David hasn't had one in years. But David's wealth wasn't built without fear. In fact, there was one moment when he almost abandoned the entire strategy. Chapter 3. The year everything collapsed. In 2008, David was 39 years old. He had spent nearly 15 years investing consistently. Then the financial crisis hit. Markets crashed. Headlines turned terrifying. Every day seemed worse than the last. David watched nearly half of his portfolio disappear. Hundreds of thousands of dollars vanished on paper. Friends panicked. Co-workers sold everything. One neighbor moved his entire retirement account into cash. Another swore he would never invest again. For the first time in years, David was afraid. Late one night, he sat at his kitchen table staring at numbers on a screen. Years of savings appeared to be evaporating. His wife asked a simple question. "Are we going to be okay?" David didn't answer immediately because he didn't know. But the next morning he made a decision. He kept buying. Every month, no matter what the headlines said. For nearly 2 years, David continued investing while everyone else ran away. Eventually, markets recovered, then they surged. The shares David purchased during those frightening months became some of the most valuable assets he would ever own. Years later, he would say, "The hardest investments I ever made turned out to be the best." That experience permanently changed the way he viewed money. Because after surviving a crisis like that, something else becomes more important than possessions. Time, Chapter 4. What rich people really buy. At 57 years old, David rarely rushes. He takes long walks every morning. He reads before breakfast. He volunteers twice a week. He never misses his grandson's baseball games. He has lunch with his daughter every Friday. This is the part of wealth most people never see. Money eventually stops buying things. It starts buying control. Control over your schedule. Control over your stress. Control over your relationships. Control over your life. David once explained it this way: "I stopped investing for money years ago. Now I invest for ordinary Tuesdays. The kind where nobody tells you where to be. Nobody tells you when to wake up. Nobody controls your day." Most people spend decades buying status. Wealthy people spend decades buying freedom. And that explains something else that confuses many people: why so many wealthy people continue driving ordinary cars. Chapter 5. The Secret of Quiet Wealth. Walk through many affluent neighborhoods and you'll notice something strange. Older cars, used SUVs, pickup trucks, reliable sedans. Why? Because wealthy people often evaluate purchases differently. Most consumers ask, "What can I afford?" Wealthy people ask, "What is this purchase costing my future?" David still drives his old truck. Not because he has to, because he wants to. At some point, something unexpected happened. He stopped caring about impressing strangers. He realized people notice your new car for a week, your watch for a day, your clothes for an hour. Then everyone goes back to thinking about themselves. So David stopped buying recognition. He started buying peace, peace during recessions, peace during layoffs, peace during emergencies, peace in the knowledge that no boss, no market cycle, and no unexpected bill could completely control his life. The richest person in your town probably isn't trying to look rich, because they already possess something more valuable: freedom. And freedom is remarkably quiet. Last year, David retired, not because he had to, because he wanted to. Every Thursday morning, he still drives that same pickup truck to the same diner on Main Street. The coffee is still black. The oatmeal is still the same. The waitress still knows his order. And most people in town still have absolutely no idea who he is. So if you ever try to identify the richest person in your town, don't start with the biggest house, or the newest car, or the flashiest lifestyle. Look for the person who isn't competing, the person who seems impossible to impress, the person who quietly chose ownership over appearances for decades. Because the people who look rich often spend their lives buying status. But the people who are rich spend their lives buying freedom, and freedom almost never announces itself.